I believe I should be live. Hello and welcome to the No One Asked You podcast. This is essentially a reattempt at episode one of what I hope will be a semi-regular thing, the In the Bag book accountability group. I had done a stream a little while back now, I think, where I was talking about Lawless Republic. I was more or less halfway through it, and I was listening back to it, thought I was a bit cringe, got a handful of things wrong, so I ended up taking it down. But I have since finished it. Um, I have a couple of things I suppose I can say on it, and then I'll talk about Dune for a bit, which is a book I've started, and I'm enjoying it tremendously. Um, and I've got quite a lot of books on the backlog that I want to feel motivated to actually go through. So I'll talk about those, and we'll see how it goes. So as I mentioned, I finished Lawless Republic. It was a good book. I enjoyed it a lot. I had heard about it. It was released relatively recently, I think toward the end of January of this year. And Adrian Goldsworthy, who has a really wonderful history YouTube channel, recommended it. He had an advanced copy and he was doing a video about some books that he liked, and he had mentioned it. And I'm very fond of Cicero, so I thought I would pick it up. The book as a whole, um, it's like reading a story, really. It's not like what you would imagine some sort of dusty historical book might be with a list of facts and dates and so on. The book essentially covers several of his earlier cases and then goes into uh, the fall of the Republic. And he basically makes the case, the author of the book sort of makes the case that as the weaponization of the Roman courts uh, intensified, so did the problems of the Roman Republic, and it sort of inflamed the Civil War. It made things much more difficult. The earliest case, he talks about a someone who was on trial for the murder of his father. Um, uh, Roscius, I think, was the name, and he starts off. He explains the circumstances of the case as best one can gather from the existing speeches, and he talks essentially about the environment that Sulla had created, particularly with the prescriptions and how people were uh, killing people and taking their money, buying things, property at uh, greatly reduced rates. Um, and supposedly some of Sulla's men had orchestrated this. They framed this guy, and Cicero did really well. And then it goes on to the next case, which was the issue of the governor of, I think it was Sicily. I would have to double check. But hello, Libralita. So essentially, this guy, again, I think it was Varius, was in charge of Sicily, and he was taking, like, essentially looting the province. And the people of Sicily were very upset, and they went to Cicero, and he worked on their behalf to bring various to justice. And then there was a trial in which there was some sort of I forget the exact um, job title, but there was someone in charge of the roads and the tolls and wine specifically. He was like raking up the price of wine, and a group of Gauls who would later on fight Caesar um, were suing this guy, essentially basically saying, hey, he's making some illegal profits. What's That's not cool. And Cicero defended the Roman, not the Gauls. And then the book gets into the Catiline conspiracy. Uh, the book gets into Cicero's rivalry with Clodius. They talk about this guy named Hortensius, who was another lawyer and big mover and shaker of the time. And essentially, what I find so interesting here is a lot of the later part of the book occurs while Caesar is in Gaul, while Caesar is doing his triumvirate stuff with Pompey and Crassus. Um, and it really reinforces this idea that it wasn't just those three. You always hear about Caesar, you always hear about Pompey and Crassus, but you don't hear as much about Cicero and Hortensius and Clodius. And it was it really sort of filled out this history, this world for me. And it was an easy read. It was engaging and worth checking out, I think, if you're interested. Now, that said, I think that's about all I've got to say on that particular book. But I have started reading Dune. So I went to the bookstore couple weeks back now, I think. I picked up a copy of Dune. I picked up a copy of uh, The Eye of the World as well. Kite was very excited and a little bit nervous when I picked it up. I think she wants me to like it because she absolutely loves The Wheel of Time. But essentially, the reason I was interested in Dune is because I heard from Brandon Sanderson, I believe, that this book is essentially a villain origin story. And that intrigued me. Generally, I prefer fantasy over sci-fi, so I was a little bit worried that the book might not be able to keep my attention, but it has been. As different as the prose is to a lot of things that I've read nowadays, with it always switching POV from like sentence to sentence. I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding it very engaging. I have seen the recent movies, and in a way, I'm glad I did. I think it's helping me sort of parse through the many things, names, and so on. Librelita says, I tried Dune after really enjoying part one, but haven't really gotten into it. Hopefully someday. Indeed. It's it's a lot. It's definitely a lot. One of the big differences I noticed between the movie and the book is Paul Atreides seems a lot younger in the book than Timothy Chalamet makes him seem in the movie, which is neat. And there are all these lines in the book about glorious purpose or something to that effect, which I think is ominous, particularly knowing where it's going. I also noticed a handful of similarities between Dune and Game of Thrones. Carol, hi Carol, says Dune and Wheel of Time definitely share some DNA, but ultimately are very different. Good to know. Very good to know. But I did actually notice some similarities between Dune and Game of Thrones, which I think Gurm has said that he looked to Dune as well. And I know I did that Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn stream a while back, in which I tried to compare Game of Thrones and Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn. But here, well, you've got this father character. I think that there's a reasonable comparison to be made between Leto and Ned Stark. They are both strong father figures who seem to care deeply about their families or family. Oh, that was a difference between the book and the movie. Or I don't quite know if it was a difference, but Leto is not married to Jessica in the book. That was I thought they were married in the movie. I guess they're not in the book. But yeah, Leto strikes me very much, or rather, Ned Stark strikes me as a Leto type figure. And the other thing is Jessica is very much a Catelyn Stark type figure, or reverse that. But I got to this part where Jessica is in a secret garden, essentially, and she receives a secret message, and the secret message is, hey, look out, they're trying to get you and your son. Uh, when that's not so different from Lysa's letter to Catelyn that they read in the Godswood, not the Godswood, in whatever the equivalent was in Winterfell. So that was really fascinating. I'm still working on all of the other things. What's the name of the Mentat? Hawait is a little bit like oh gosh, what's the name of the Maester at Winterfell? Maester Luwin, perhaps. Speaking of Hawait and the Mentats, I guess Paul has been going through Mentat training, and he didn't like realize it. And then I guess his dad comes in and he's like, well, do you want to continue with the Mentat training or not? Because at this point, you need to know that you're going through it. I thought that was neat. I really noticed Jessica's manipulation of Mape, I think the name was. I'm quite terrible at notes when I don't know that I'm going to be streaming and talking. But essentially, the moment I'm referring to is when Jessica gets this knife. I think it's called the Chris knife, from a Fremen. And Jessica is in the process of saying what the knife is called, but she doesn't know what the knife is called. So she's kind of taking a stab in the dark, pun semi-intended there. And the Fremen interrupts because Jessica accidentally says the proper name halfway through, and it's correct, and she just kind of goes with it. And that's really humorous. There was a chapter after the assassination attempt on Paul's life that we get from Leto's perspective, where they keep repeating the line, or he keeps thinking the phrase, they have tried to take the life of my son. And I thought that was very powerful. Very, oh, I know what's coming for Leto, and I don't want it to happen. And then the other big moment that stuck out to me was when Jessica and Dr. Yue are talking, and you're getting, again, it's this prose that jumps from POV to POV in between sentences. And you've got Yue thinking, can I do this? I can't, I have to save my wife. I don't want to betray them. And then at the end of the scene, Jessica walks out and she thinks to herself something to the effect of, I should trust my friends more, because she's feeling very paranoid about all the danger that's coming. And that was just such a heartbreaking moment. Um, and all of this to say, I'm tremendously enjoying the book quite a lot. So I know more or less where the book is going. I've seen the first two movies, and I have a very weak idea of what the next book, I think it's Dune Messiah, is. Um, I know that there's a son, and I think Paul like ends up not wanting to be the Messiah. It's good stuff. I think that's the bulk of what I have to say. Sounds interesting. Yes, quite. I think so, at least. I'm definitely eager to glean more comparisons to Gurm. Um, I think that's the bulk of what I have to say on Dune specifically. But I do have a handful of books. I've been spending way too much on books lately. I got Wheel of Time, the first one. I got Dune. I recently, just today, got a copy of the Aeneid, translated by Robert Fagles. Um, so this is sort of a wonky one for me. When I was a kid, I read essentially kids' versions of the Iliad and the Odyssey. I know the highlights. I know about the Trojan War. I know about Odysseus. Now he pisses off Poseidon, and so on and so forth. But I don't know much about the Aeneid. So I'm very fond of the history of early Rome. Lieberly just says, oh my God, you're getting into Wheel of Time? Kita will be happy at least. So she, I think she's nervous about it. She really, really wants me to like it because she is so fond of it. So we don't do videos on my channel. So those who haven't checked out her channel, and I'd highly recommend it because she's great. She has, I think they're called sleeves. She has tattoos all up her arms that are Wheel of Time based. So she's a tremendously big fan of it. And she's one of the complaints I've had about Sanderson's early work is repetitive Sanderson, and she's like, I'm going through the books right now, and I'm scared you're not going to like it because it's repetitive here too. This overstates the complaint I have, but I genuinely don't know if I'm gonna like it or not. I know a handful of things about it. I know that Rand al'Thor is the one reborn. I think that's supposed to be a mystery, at least at first. I know, I guess, passive things that I just can't quite articulate for the moment. But back to the Aeneid. So basically, I am very familiar with Livy's recounting of the early history of Rome, particularly the regal period. Libralita says, I'm curious to hear your opinion. I read the first one and it just wasn't my thing. Interesting. Well, I will get to it, certainly. I want to. But I'm also familiar with Plutarch's Life of Numa Pompilius. So the point of the Aeneid is that it follows Aeneas, I believe, after the Trojan War, where he ends up settling in Italy. He deals with King Latinus, and ultimately his descendant, Romulus, will go on to found Rome. Speaking of that, I also did just get a copy of Polybius's The Early History of Rome. And as I mentioned, I'm familiar with Livy, so I'm going to be very curious to see the different styles there. But my understanding with Polybius is that takes place, or starts, not during the regal period, but I think around the time of one of the oh gosh, I'm totally blanking on it. Punic Wars, one of the Punic Wars. So we'll see how that goes. Let's see, what else is there? For those interested in Ascension Unleashed and The Way of Kings, Kita and I just recorded chapters 45 in Well of Ascension, and I want to say 33 in Way of Kings. Somatics is the chapter. So we read and recorded that. Actually, I should be editing chapter 45 right now, but you know what? I felt motivated to do this, so here I am. While I'm consciousing, that's probably right. I have sort of weak ideas, I suppose you could say, for a short story. I want to practice writing short stories, and I was toying around with this idea of a speedrunner, a video game speedrunner who enters into a tournament and that's kind of, well, I guess you could say that's the premise. I have an idea that someone at some point maybe gets carpal tunnel syndrome and is unable to compete. That could be an interesting roadblock or benefit, depending on how I choose to play that out. I'm imagining an opening scene, perhaps mid speed run. I'm imagining an environment with, Mountain Dew in the room, and I try to think of like the yes but no and. Maybe it starts off with this main character doing really well on a speed run, and maybe he gets overexcited and just on the cusp of getting a world record or something, the Mountain Dew drops and short circuits everything, and then he has to afford a new copy of the game and so on. So I really should write this down. Maybe I could do like a faux writing stream where I just sort of like diagram just a list of ideas I have for this, maybe do a rough draft or something. Maybe that could be fun. You see a lot of writing channels on YouTube offering advice on how to write, and I'm certainly the farthest thing from an expert. But maybe it could be fun to like stream of conscious my way through a first draft of a short story. Maybe. I don't think I've read a story about a speedrunner. That could be fun. Any type of video game you're thinking of. So I am a big fan of the Super Mario 64 speedrunner Cheese. So naturally, I feel like it would have to be a retro game or something to that effect. Hey, some of those YouTubers are far from experts as well. That's not wrong. Very much not wrong. So yeah, I was thinking maybe a retro game, something I would make up. I wouldn't have it be an actual game, and certainly not like a Call of Duty, not a MOBA or something like that, but just a general old school, simple but fun uh, game. I kind of imagine the character as maybe having, so he needs to have, um, I guess, some other element to him driving him. I was thinking maybe he needs to get, he needs money for college, or maybe he has like a sister or something and needs to take care of her. So that's where a lot of his money goes to. Um, that could add sort of a little bit more depth and life to this guy. Obviously, I need like a rival, some sort of jerk, jock speedrunner. Um, not so frequently I'll watch TV and see um, them try to, the writers try and do a storyline that involves gaming or coding, and they try so hard. They use all of these terms, and it's like, I'm a gamer. I play tabletop games. None of what you have just said makes sense. And so if I were to go into this in more depth, I would want to make the language I use, the terminology or whatever, be as authentic as possible. I don't really know anything about how official tournaments like AGDQ get set up. So it might behoove me to look into that. Maybe he got on his college esports team, but he's clearly too interested in speedrunning rather than actual competitive scene. I love that. I love that idea. Yeah, so he, like, instead of practicing League or something to that effect, he's too busy speedrunning, and that causes tension. Um, that's great. Yeah, gamers in the mainstream can be so funny. Yeah. Speaking of which, I just caught the new season of Black Mirror, which wasn't bad. They did a follow up to the Star Trek inspired episode, which I thought was pretty darn good. Um, and the rest were good as well. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to try. I think that's the bulk of everything I want to say or have to say. Maybe I'll try like highlighting in my book the more I get through Dune. Um, so I'll have like specific passages to reference, and maybe I can get a bit more than a half hour out of these streams, but I'm going to continue to try and do this regularly. And I'm going to try and read at least one chapter of Dune a night. And I'll, if not that, other things. Thank you, Libralita, for hanging out. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, anonymous third person. Yeah, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time. Okay, thanks, bye.